All right. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Health and Fitness podcast with my good friend, business partner, and personal health and fitness mentor, Jim Brown. What up, Jim?
Not much, man. How are you doing?
Doing good, dude. Doing damn good, man. And
Yeah.
You're just getting home in Miami all day, all week?
Yeah, man, getting in off the road, dude. Been been putting out some miles this last month, so
Yeah.
Getting it done.
Yep. Well, hey, man, you're, I know we talk about, this podcast is really focused on health and fitness, and an excuse because, we're both in sales, right? And, but an excuse I get from so many is, dude, it's just so hard because I'm always on the road, right? Which I know we talked about that. Maybe we'll kind of lean into that a little bit here today, but, all right, but the main topic that we want to talk about is, getting jacked, right? Like putting on muscle mass over as we age, over the age of 40, over the age of 50, right? Because there's that myth, but I don't want to say myth because there's some truth to it of we hit a certain age, it gets naturally start losing muscle if we're not intentional with it. But you were just sharing with me about, the amount of muscle you're putting on right now, and you're in your early 50s, friend of yours in their, 40s that's putting on muscle. So kind of let's dissect this and talk about, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are mine and your age, and they might be thinking, oh man, I can't put on muscle like I maybe, used to, or I can't put on muscle anymore.
Yeah, I mean, let me preface that, a little bit too. I've had much more muscle than I do now. So, it's a different game than if you're trying to build it for the first time. And same with the person, my buddy that I talked to, he's been bigger before, and we both are going through periods now where we're trying to put a little bit more on. And for whatever reason, I just got to that point in my training where I kind of wanted to do it, and I have a couple injuries, but overall doing pretty well. So I've just been kind of going for it. And I've been talking a lot about it Twitter on carbs, and as normally I'll do a carb cycling type approach, and that's the way that I keep in relatively decent shape or in my comfort zone, which is anywhere from 8 to 12 to 13% body fat, and that's where I like to live. If I try to push down to 8, it's very difficult, but I can stay there, and slowly creep back up. But about 12%, I'm super comfortable. I don't have to be super militant about my calories and all that. And training's really good. I got plenty of energy, all that stuff, and I still feel good taking my shirt off at the beach. So that's why that's kind of my range. But so same with this guy, and I've been talking about eating more and more carbs, and I've been exploring, kind of experimenting, eating more than just the high day, and replacing even more of my calories with carbohydrates. And so far, man, it's been fucking great. And what's been great? Well, I've had a lot more energy to train. That's for damn sure. Had a lot more energy to do a lot of stuff, and the muscle is coming back on surprisingly fast. I mean, surprisingly fast. And it's not that I'm really lifting so much harder or so much different. Um, you know, uh, uh, Supplements, drugs, all that stuff is real consistent. It's not like I'm doing anything crazy or anything that would attribute kind of these results. But the carbohydrates have played a massive role in that. And so, from my low days and workout days, from 100 to 200 carbs, and then doing a high day of somewhere around 900 1,000. I'll still do a high day somewhere in that dosage, 900,000 grams of carbs. But then my training days, I'm closer to 300 or 400 grams carbs, and calories are still low enough to where I'm not putting on body fat. But it's just been a really interesting experiment. I'm not using insulin, so there's ways to kind of make all that stuff more effective. That's one of them. But I'm just eating the carbs, and man, I've been really surprised. And so my buddy, of course, he's seeing me talk about this on Twitter, and so he starts experimenting with it and kind of says I'm going to go for it. And been doing the same thing. And we were just talking about he ate 4 bagels the other day for a meal. And I've certainly done that. And so you're 200 grams carbs bolus, and I think he said he's around 220, and he's eating even more than I am, 400, 500 a day, and just having great results with it. And so anyway, it's just it's kind of interesting. We in the evolution of what I would call my quote mastery of what I what I'm good at in this space, nutrition and helping people do all the stuff that I've done. It's just a consistent learning and experimenting and retweaking thing. And I think all of us eventually go through that low carb, keto, insulin is bad type thing. And then if you keep working through it and if you keep experimenting and you're open minded and trying new things and listen to input from others who've done some of the things that you are trying to do and experiment, I think you find your way out of that to where you're able to use carbohydrates as a very effective tool and not only use them as a tool, but then, really experiment and see how far you can take it and what the bounds are and kind of learn that craft a little bit better. So it's been kind of cool, man. And to be honest with you, it's great to sit down, on the couch and eat a whole sleeve of, rice cakes for a snack. So it's just been, it's been a really interesting experiment.
Yeah. Now with that, I mean, you're still making sure that you're within your macros. You're just adjusting, maybe lowering the fat, leaner sources of protein, so you can you're still.
I'm still very close. Yeah. I'm still close to just a little bit of a surplus of calories. And some days I'm under, some days I'm a little bit over, but it's not like I'm fucking eat buffets all day and just going for it, putting on fat. So I'm actually still getting leaner. So I know that overall net a week, I'm in a deficit. So my calories are right there on the border. And so I've lowered protein a little bit and gotten rid of more fat than I usually do too. So trying to eat very, very little fat and replace those calories with carbohydrates. And that's really easy to do. I mean, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories and, carbohydrates is 4. So you get a lot more, chewing and eating out of the carbs than you do fat. And that's always cool too.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, and so you started, you're scaling carbs up and because I know for a while there, and when I say this, I'm just going off of comments that you made here in the podcast of, okay, now that you've entered your early 50s of it being a little bit more challenging to put on muscle. But before we hit the record button,
sure.
You're like, man, I've been surprised about how much muscle I'm putting on. So you really think it was just that tweaking the carbs that's just allowing it to skyrocket? Because your training's been consistent, right? Same routine.
Yeah, you know what though? The other variable in training has been I'm doing 45 minutes to an hour of cardio a day.
Yeah.
Zone 2 on the bike. And so theoretically, that should make it even harder to put on muscle, right? Well, I know that the more cardio I do in that lower end, not, let's call it steady state, that increases my recovery, increases my workload and my capacity to work. And so it allows me also to eat a little bit more food and drive more nutrients in my muscles, and recovery is enhanced. And so that has a little bit to do with it for sure. But I've been doing that for a year, and although my recovery's been great, and overall capacity to work is better and increased, the carbohydrates has been the recent, maybe the last 6 weeks type of adjustment. And man, that's been the real change, that I've seen, the real change that I've been able to notice and attribute it to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's an important thing to talk about. I mean, and I know we've been talking about this a lot in several podcasts recently, but man, there's not a day that I go on social media, whether it even by certain physicians, but it's just this huge new thing. And it's not new. I mean, it's been going on for a while, but carbs are the enemy. Get away from carbs. But it's, and I get some of that philosophy. I mean, I remember talking with you several years ago, and I'm like, oh, dude, no, I got to keep my carbs under 100 grams a day, otherwise I start putting on body fat. And and I always thought it was just because of my insulin sensitivity or unsensitivity, but of being morbidly obese. But like, dude, carbs aren't making any fat. It's just, but the mistake I was making there is I was adding the carbs, but I wasn't reducing my fat intake, right?
Yeah.
So, because my diet's, before that was high protein, high fat. I've never went keto. I've never, and when I say fat, I mean, I just eat a lot of red meats. I eat a lot of eggs. Like it's, It's not like I'm
Right.
eating donuts, you know, but
Yeah.
then I started adding in 200 grams of carbs a day, but I'm still
Mhm.
eating sometimes a dozen whole eggs a day. So
Yeah.
having that extra fat, then increase that. It was just spilling me over with total calories.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real common thing to do. And a lot of times the low carb keto type people aren't, you know, and again, man, I was there. I'm guilty of it. But I found my way out of it. I thought my way out of it. So I'm a little judgmental, but I get it. I know why you're stuck in that, people get stuck in that space because shit, I did too. But calories fucking matter, and it doesn't matter. Insulin isn't the enemy. It's like you can eat as much calories you want from fat and not put on body fat. That's the biggest lie. One of the biggest lies continually told in this space, and it doesn't matter. The calories in, calories out model works. The thing is that people don't consider all the variables, and that's why. I mean, if you eat a carnivore diet that's mostly protein, or if you eat a really high protein diet, or if you eat an Atkins type diet where it's mostly lean protein, um, the thermal effect of food, the cost that it takes to process the proteins, the aminos, high cost to convert to glucose into body fat eventually. All those things play into it. That's why high protein diets are so effective at not only keeping you lean, cutting body fat, but keeping you full and all those things. And so it's easy to get sucked into that and then think that, oh, I can eat as much fat as I want because calories don't really matter. And then all of a sudden, you're either skinny fat or you can't get body fat off, and you start losing muscle maybe, or performance sucks, whatever. But it takes an open mind and some experimenting to work your way out of that. And you see it, there's some carnivore type of people that for whatever reason, accidentally fall down and a piece of fruit falls in the mouth. And then they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they can do 80 more push-ups than they were able to yesterday on glucose. And then, so they add fruit in, and it's a great diet, then their performance comes back and all that stuff. And so, it's just a matter of experimenting. But to your point, yeah, when people think, carbs are going to make you fat, I think that's, again, that's one of the biggest kind of lies told. Now, there's some caveats to that. Would I have somebody with very little muscle mass and somebody that's metabolically totally broken and a massive amount of body fat eat a bag of gummy nerds? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have them consume 250 grams of simple sugar, because it's not supporting what they're doing. But me, I probably got, well, I'm 260 now. I'm in the same shape I was in high school. When I left high school, I was 215. So, I mean, you could say essentially over my high school weight, which I was pretty jacked for a high school kid, I got like 40 pounds, 45 pounds of muscle on. So at 45 pounds of muscle, I can eat 500 grams of carbs if I'm not already full of glycogen. And none of it's going to go to fat. None of it's going to get converted. All of it's going to be stored and used. Some of it's going to be burned as onboard energy, and the rest is going to be stored as glycogen. Um, and so I don't think people understand that, or they don't get the concept. And um, there's a lot of little nuances to that, but it just takes some open mindedness and experimenting. But again, man, when you just asked me when we started this, did I adjust my calories? Yeah, I adjusted my calories.
Yeah. Yeah. So then in correct anything that I misstate here, but my understanding on this is, because we're talking about carbohydrates and the importance of them when you're wanting to put on muscle, and especially as we age, because we get that much, we want to maintain or have as much muscle in our older years that we can, and that's the number one preventative, our best thing that we can do to prevent future disease as we age, is keeping on skeletal muscle and all things that we've talked a lot about. But it's like, okay, when you're in there working out, you're doing resistance training for hypertrophy, like your muscles need, and how you fuel that is through muscle glycogen. Once those glycogen stores are out, my understanding is that's where you start to go catabolic, and your muscle will actually start eating the muscle tissue. That's why it maybe isn't always a great idea to train fully fasted, or so then with that, it's the carbohydrates that fuel, that muscle glycogen that allows those training routines to be that much more intense. She's going to allow more protein synthesis. And am I kind of having the process?
Well, there's a couple things there. So if you were eating a high fat diet and you had, let's just say, whoa, did you, I don't know why my computer screen shut off. Anyway, if you're eating a high fat diet and you're working out, and you run out of glycogen, you're not going to go catabolic, especially if you're in a caloric abundance per se. But there's, and this is one of the things I was talking about on Twitter the other day. There's something to training with glycogen in your muscle. Like when you get a pump, when you're training for the specific purpose of hypertrophy and getting a muscle larger, there's something that happens, and it's not just the blood or whatever. But when you train with glycogen in the muscle, your training's more efficient. You get a better pump, and it results in what I think better growth. Is there a lot of explanation to that? No, because you can maintain muscle and you could still theoretically grow muscle without glycogen or very low glycogen, as long as you're the calories are right. But something there just doesn't work the same, man. It doesn't work the same. And necessarily the when you get blood into a muscle and pump it up, somebody had questioned me about this, was like, well, that's just lactic acid and this and that and blood, and there's no evidence. And I was like, listen, when your muscle's full of glycogen and then you put all the blood into it, it kind of stretches, or something happens. I don't know if it's fascia stretching, if it's, the pump is making the contractions better. I don't know what happens, man. I really don't. But I never like to have my guys train on flat or zero glycogen, because it's not as effective. It's just not. And that's a practice-based experience. Now, do you have to do that to get into lower levels of body fat? Yeah, you do. And that's kind of why we carb cycle like that, so that, by the time that you run out of glycogen, you're not training more than a day and a half with tanked levels, and then you refeed. But, to answer your question, man, I don't think training without glycogen in your muscles is super efficient, and it's not supporting your effort to grow or maintain muscle. And then you add in the age factor, where it's harder. All the processes don't work as well. It's even more hard. And then if it's the first time that you're putting on muscle, this is brand new muscle, and you're older and all those things, then it's even more difficult. So why would you put yourself in a compromised position and not try to optimize all the angles, for the efforts that you're putting in? And to me, that's training with glycogen and, perfusing your muscles with aminos and, the recovery and the cardio and all that stuff, all the other tricks that we use.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was watching, and I don't know the guy's name. I haven't really watched him. I follow heavily or whatever, but it just was on YouTube. Guy that was, pretty damn amazing shape. Dude, that's, I don't know his age, but I'm guessing somewhere between, like in our age range.
Yeah.
But the dude was freaking, he's yoked like you, man, like a big mofo, claims to be TRT dose, right, or TRT. And I mean, wasn't like, pro body, like, like I was like, okay,
Right.
right. Like but he was, talking. So he was talking about the importance of carbohydrates. So he, this dude's like 230, but so he's like, okay, I'm doing my 230 protein. I can't remember exactly what he said around carbs, but he said, like he makes sure he gets in on call it 300 grams of carbs a day. But then he was talking about when he goes and he's, dude's lean, right? He keeps pretty lean, but he's saying, okay, like when he's trying to get into a deficit to even get leaner, he's like, look, I don't drop my protein or drop my carbs, because I'll drop my fat a little, but he's like, I just increased my cardio to get myself into a deficit. Because he was like, especially as you're aging, man, to keep this muscle and keep it growing, he's like, you need those fucking carbs, dude. So he's like, I might, he might, just low resistance, a lot of walking, but just to maintain that. But he's like, hey, that's just how he gets himself into a deficit, but without sacrificing the carbs, because otherwise he's like, every time I do that, I just start wasting away muscle.
Yeah, man, there's there's so many instances I have. I mean, the one that I like to use a lot, I had a pretty decent, pretty big power lifter guy. He's placing at regionals, But he looked like a power lifter, right? Super big, super, could have been a sumo guy, that kind of look. Super strong though in those 3 lifts, and kind of wanted my opinion on what I could do. He was topped out, wasn't doing anymore, couldn't progress on his lifts, doing everything all the power lifters do and the conventional knowledge there. And just kind of felt like, he didn't want to throw more drugs at it, and wanted to see if he could try something different nutritionally. And, so I had him write down calories or write down food log and everything that I do with everybody, for 10 days, 2 weeks, just so I could get an idea of what's really going on. And, the guy is consuming just as I remember, it was more than half of his caloric total a day was from fat, and so we just made a change to, like, this is this is gonna go against what you're used to, but let's get rid of that fat and replace it with fucking rice, and carbs, and see what happens. And it changed it changed everything for him. He did lose a little bit of body weight, but was still in his weight class, which was, where he wanted to stay. He didn't necessarily want to drop, but we were able to maintain around the same body weight. But to me, it looked like he got much more muscular, and his training was much different because he had carbohydrates on board now. And he started breaking through all the plateaus that he had without doing anything crazy, which is what he wanted. And countless stories just like that with clients. Hey, my body, I'm stuck, I'm skinny fat. What do I do? And it's like, well, get rid of the fucking fat, man. It's not really doing anything for you. And there's this notion that, oh, you have to eat X amount of grams of fat for your body to make hormones and do all this. Like, I don't think that's true, man. I just don't. And if you're eating all your protein sources from meat, you're getting fat. You can't avoid it. It's not like you need 0 fat animal protein. And so you're getting fat, but by replacing the added fat calories with carbohydrates, man, almost everybody that I've ever worked with that stayed on plan had an improvement in body composition and training performance. And so I agree with what that guy says. And as I get leaner, this is just traditionally too, not even me experimenting with more carbs now, but anytime that I get below 10%, I'm entering single digit body fat, I have to eat way more carbs than before. Really? I have to. And that's to maintain and to have any chance at maintaining muscle and being able to train. And that's what allows me, I believe, to burn more body fat and get leaner.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of long explanations today.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because all you've done is, your training's been the same. Yeah, right. Yeah. But you put on that's about 10 pounds of muscle, because I think you were hovering around 250 for a while there, right?
Dude, my suits don't fit anymore, which is, I had them made in 2016, and I've never not been able to get them over my arms and shoulders and back. So it's been a while since I've put on this much, but I don't know. It's really interesting, dude. Really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome, man. Okay, and I think, and I'll just restate this because I think it's important, is you're increasing your carbs, but you're still hitting your macros. So you're not
caloric intake. Yeah, caloric intake is not blown out.
Yep. Because this is something you always state, but I just see, and I made this mistake so many times too, of, like you always talk about, it doesn't matter what the calorie, makeup is. If you're in a surplus, you're going to put on body fat.
Yep. And, that looks different. Like if you're in a surplus, if you're 1,000 calories over in protein, it's not really 1,000 calories, but you're still over. If you're 1,000 calories over in fat, it's definitely 1,000 calories. If you're 1,000 calories over in carbs, depends what kind of carbohydrates it is, because they all have a different cost of, breakdown and assembly, and an essential cost to, processing your body. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, if you're in a caloric excess, your body is not going to just fucking piss out, nutrients. It's going to hold on to them and store them.
Yeah.
So, it's what, 3 million years of evolution.
Yep. Yep. So, okay. So you're doing a gram of protein per pound of body weight roughly. So then
Yeah.
now I know you cycle it, but overall, what would you say about 50% of your caloric? Well, you can't have 50%. Well, I'm just trying to think
Um,
of, because you're what, 80 pounds heavier than me roughly, right? So when
yeah.
we start
So
pulling,
yeah, for me to maintain kind of where I'm at body fat level wise, depending on how much I'm putting out, it's about 2,700 calories
okay.
because I don't move a lot. I'm not moving like in certain, it depends. So usually if I'm right around that range, no matter what I'm doing, I have a pretty easy time staying lean. And I'm not in a huge deficit, but I'm also not gaining. So it's somewhere in there. On the higher calorie, the higher carbohydrate day, I usually go over that, daily intake. But overall, for the week, I'm either really close to or in a slight deficit.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm still in the low end, dude. Yeah, I still, I eat carbs pre and post trip, but I still am kind of in that 100-gram range a day. But I probably need to up that.
It would be an interesting experiment for
Yep,
sure. Yeah.
yep, yep. And rice is your go-to.
I just process rice really well. But like we were talking about the bagels, I've been doing bagels too. And the bagel, the texture, and I'm not putting anything on them. If anything, maybe a little bit of jelly, but not, nothing, no fat. But my normal post workout meal is 50 grams of protein from egg whites, and then one or two bagels. And the bagels I use are the Dave bagels, and I think they're around 47 or something carb, 50 carbs, and that's been really great lately. And I seem to get a good hit out of that. But otherwise, yeah, it's rice.
Yeah,
Oatmeal works okay, but it's so fibrous. I don't feel like I get as many grams of carbohydrates out gram for gram as I do rice or something like that. But or you can do fruit. Fruit's
yeah,
really easy too.
yeah. That's usually most of mine. Fruit.
Yeah.
I get some from the, because I eat a few servings of Greek yogurt every day. Some
Yeah.
fruit. Eat a lot of fruit.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
Yeah, it's clean. I mean, fruit always works great. Um, for me too. I try to stick with, kind of the more sugary, not as fibery. I mean, pineapple works really well. The berries, apples. I could eat 20 apples and not feel any of the carbs from it, because of the
yeah.
fiber. Um, but grapes, pretty decent, pretty good. You just have to eat a lot of them. Watermelon, got to eat a whole bunch. But yeah, I mean, again, experiment with those sources, but typically those are the ones that most guys are using and mostly are the go-tos.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, speaking of calorie surplus, and I know I told you this off air, but after our last podcast that we did, I was talking to you about my son who's, just getting obsessed with working out and obsessed with all of this stuff. We're driving down the road the other day and he asked me, he's like, Dad, he goes, why are people, why are there so many people that are fat? And I won't get into this story because I don't want to offend any, but he's like, well, I'll get into it. So he's like, talking about like, at school, he's like, yeah, out of all the, out of all my teachers, there's only two that like, aren't fat. He's like, why? Like it was a serious question to him, but now that he's
Well,
observing,
and it's coming from a place, right, of genuine curiosity, right?
yeah,
I
yeah, it
mean,
wasn't like
there's
trying to
no
be
filter.
mean. It was like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
out of
yeah.
curiosity,
No,
like,
genuinely
yeah,
wanting to know. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, that's, you know, in what if you were fat? What would the message then be? It's like, well, that's normal. I mean, I guess that's what I'm going to end up, right? It kind of goes back to what we were talking about the other week is, you setting the example for your kids. And I think that your kid was really curious because then it's like, well, why aren't, my family isn't fat. Why aren't we fat? But everybody, almost everybody else is. Why are those people fat? And it's a great question. I mean, that's a really good question. Why is that? I think it because there's a lot of things there, but one, it's socially acceptable now.
yeah,
It's socially acceptable. You're fat, great. Oh, don't worry about it. You're healthy. Yay, go. Empower you, fatty. It's normal. You're healthy. Don't let anyone tell you different. It's it's all, that's a lot of it, I believe. Then more and more people are fat. You walk through Walmart at fucking any time of the day, and you're like, geez, what am I, a freak? I have some kind of disease. But it's really interesting, man. And again, that goes back to setting the example for your kids. And God damn, man, I'd hate to be that example. On the day that I die, if I have a moment to recall and recover all the things that I've done and reflect on some of those things, man, if I was setting that example for my kids and then I watched them grow up and be fat, man, that wouldn't go too well. You know what I mean? That wouldn't go too well with me.
Yeah. Well, you must not work and not have kids, so it's easy for you, right?
Yeah, that poor guy, man. I took it easy on him. And that was one of the things, I like we said, I have that kind of that jokingly, that joke kind of meme that I post a lot. It's, ask the question, am I fat? And, do you have abs? Yes. Okay. You're not fat. Do you not have abs? No. Okay. You're fat. And it's, to me, it's that simple, but it's kind of a joke, but it's not really a joke. And, one of the guys came back and said, oh, well, that must be nice. You must not have a full-time job or a family. Which, as you know, I've had more kids than most families, and worked around that. And I can't remember legitimately me not ever having at least, one full-time job and then two part-times of doing stuff on the side, then a hobby that I've been obsessed with, and the family and everything else, and and all this other stuff. But that's the top cope. That's the top excuse.
Yeah.
There's always an excuse, and that's the most convenient one. But again, is that the example you want to set for your children? Well, I had to work. That's why I ordered the pizza instead of the fucking chicken salad, because I have a job. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. No, I have a family. So, the kids were eating chicken wings. So I had to eat 20 of them instead of, having a chicken breast and a fucking salad, or a chicken breast and some rice. It's the oldest one. I mean, that's the one that everybody throws in their face. Why they can't do it, why they can't get into shape. They don't have time, whatever.
Yeah. And I get okay, like if you want to get massively yoked and go have a career in bodybuilding, okay, there's some time consuming things there. But
Sure.
to maintain healthy levels of body fat, I would argue that it's less time consuming than yourself to get fat, because you're not.
Well, you're going to spend less time eating.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're saving a bunch of time there.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. They're, one of the common questions, when I see somebody in person and, they're compelled to ask a question, or, out of genuine curiosity, whatever, one of the most common things is, well, man, how many hours do you spend a week in the gym, or how many hours you spend a day in the gym? That's always like a lot fucking less than you think, man. The real question is, how long have I been doing that? I've been doing that, 3+ decades. That's why, it's the consistency of that. And, the time commitment for me to stay in shape and put a little bit of muscle on is not huge these days. But if I was just trying to cut my body fat down, I wouldn't even really need to do cardio. I would just need to not eat as much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but then I wouldn't have a cope.
Yeah. It's just
I'd have some excuse.
Yeah, it's just priorities, man. And it's just like all things in life, dude. If you want it, you're going to make it happen. If it's important to you, make it a priority and you do it. And
yeah. Well, and that just goes back to what, I mean, when I die and move on or whatever, and my kids are talking about me, and they're thinking about me, they're joking around and stuff, I don't want them to think like, yeah, he was a good guy. He worked his job and came home and, ate a bag of peanuts and drank a 6-pack of beer every night for 40 days, for 40 decades. And that was kind of his thing. Didn't really do much.
Yep.
I can't imagine that, man. That would be, that's hell to me. I don't want to be remembered that way. And that's certainly the life I don't want to lead. And it's goddamn sure not the example I want to set for my kids.
Yeah, and then it's just I know again these are things that we talk about a lot here, but it's just dude the quality of life. You know, like
Yeah.
I mean, like dude, like you know, I've experienced different things and different levels of success and different things, but out of everything, dude, like better than money, better than anything is when you're in good shape and you feel good about your body. You feel good about, when you are at the beach or whatever, you peel your shirt off and you feel good about it,
Yeah.
right? And then just being in shape, the energy you have, and not like to me, at least, there's been no better feeling out of any of the types of success I've created. Like that is the best.
Well, there was a guy at the airport the other day that I was just watching, and he's probably mid 40s. Um, he wasn't blessed with really striking genetics. A little bit short, but man, he was shaped like a fucking pear. He was bent over, like he was broken in half, watching his phone the whole fucking time, didn't take his eyes off the phone. Um, it just looked like a fucking miserable existence to me. And just kind of taking this whole guy in, and just like, fuck, what does this guy do how does he support himself? What is, this guy might be like I don't know, a brilliant coder or something. I have no idea, but man, it just looked fucking miserable to be in that guy's skin. And those are all things that you can fucking change. Those are all things controllable. I mean, he's not going to get better looking, but goddamn, you look better unfat. That's for damn sure. And with clean clothes on and not a pregnant belly and standing up straight. I mean, it's just and the guy might be awesome or whatever, but it just to your point, quality of life. You look over him and like, God damn, man, what's that quality of life like?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I setting the example, at least in this area with my kids, is like, this is how to feel good about that, or at least have a higher quality of life and do the things that I want. I mean, they see me go out and the spearfishing trips are not fucking easy, man. And literally that's what I trained for. I mean, that's why I started doing so much cardio, so that I could increase my work capacity to pursue those hobbies. But that's all part of this quality of life thing. It's and you can't do that if you're broken down. You
Yep.
just can't. You can't do those things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I'll get asked sometimes of like, well, why'd you choose Jim Brown as like your health and fitness mentor? I'm like, okay, well, not only do you have the knowledge, but I'm like, dude, when I'm 50, I want to be in better shape than I am when I'm 40. And I'm like, all right, this dude's in better shape than me and he's 50 and I'm 40, right? So I'm like, right, like I want to also,
I don't know about that, but yeah.
but I always look at, okay, like I'm going to choose a mentor that has accomplished what I want to go out there and achieve, right? And
well, you would hope.
50s, I want to be running circles around mofos in their 20s.
You would hope. I mean, you would hope when you choose somebody to take advice from, they're at least practicing the craft, and in it, they're in it and doing it and actively still trying to learn and improve. I would think. I mean, that's how I choose mentors or people I try to vet for information.
Yeah. How many personal trainers do you see though that are in terrible shape?
At the gym I go to now, it's not bad. I mean, there's nobody that really sticks out. They all look like they kind of train. And I watch everybody train, and they're actually the best that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And that might be because I live in Florida. It might be because there's more competition in that. I don't know, but for the most part, I would send anybody to the EOSs that I train at to be trained by pretty much anybody over there, because they're all given some pretty much sane advice. I haven't seen anybody really making anybody do anything stupid in a while from a trainer's perspective, and they're actually all in pretty decent shape. So unfortunately, it hasn't been a source of Twitter threads there for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to go to it's hard to go to a fat trainer, or somebody who's never done. I talk about that all the time. The guys who have opinions about growing muscle and they weigh 165 pounds, and never have been over that. I'm not talking about guys who were and then came back down to mortal. You know, they never have. They've never bench pressed their body weight for 20 times, or you know, those kind of guys. Doesn't mean they don't have knowledge, but man, have they practiced the craft? Have they mastered the craft? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes you find things that work that you can't explain. You know, now I will speak to the business world here, but like, dude, I don't have any rhyme to the reason as to why this works. But it's like, okay, in the sales world, well, real estate, I'm like, whatever anybody tells you, whatever they say for their timeline is, cut that in half, and that's going to be their timeline. Now, do I have some freaking, you know, scientific data to back? No, I just know that it freaking works. You know, right? And there's just shit that you figure out. They can't, you know, like just little tweaks, you know, right? They just figure out, but you can't figure those out unless you're a doer.
I was working with a different rep, you know, in a market this last week, and there was a couple places I was like, hey, you know, what about these places? Oh, well, you know, what's our approach? What are we going to do? And I go, I don't know. Let's just fucking walk in there and see what happens. Sure enough, man, you know how it goes. But this happens to me all the time. It's like, fuck it, I'm going to go in there and see what happens. And you know, I don't have some black whiteboarded plan out. I don't even know who the fuck it is. You know, oh, they're, you know, they could be a target. I don't know. And magical shit happens. And that's one thing I've always said about sales is like the hardest thing to do is get out of the car. And once you do that, stuff starts happening. And you know, it's kind of like fitness too. And you know, you along the way, you master your craft. But as long as you're willing to do that first step and get out of the fucking car and walk in the place, then you know, things can happen if you want them to. It's the same with this space, man. If you get up and go to the gym, you may not be a master of your craft now, but if you keep going, things are going to happen. You know, you keep showing up and putting in the work and getting out of your fucking car and walking in, stuff's going to happen. And I think that's really, you know, that's a key to everything.
Yep. Yep. Well, hell yeah, man. Well, it sounds like a good place to maybe wrap up this session. So I guess the moral of the story is eat more carbohydrates. But don't get
don't be afraid of carbs. Yep. Don't be afraid of carbs. Dump the fat, eat more carbs, and see what happens. But you know, again, and I got a couple guys doing this. A couple more had reached out, and you know, we're increasing carbohydrates and experimenting with them. Doesn't mean it's going to work in everybody, but overall, it's been very effective. They're dropping their fat calories and increasing the carbohydrates, and seeing you know, positive changes in training. But again, always, like if I was your, you know, your coach, I would have you try to control all the variables and then run experiments and see what happens. You know, that's what I'm doing with myself.
Yep. 100%, man. 100%. And those watching and listening, we always appreciate you guys being here. Make sure to check out forgelife.com, FORJlife.com. That's Jim and my supplement company. Check out our nootropic, our eye formula. And again, appreciate you guys watching. Jim, as always, man, pleasure jamming with you, brother.
Always, man. Love it.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.